I decided to start a new place
Morning, Rotarians and guests. Happy New Year to everyone. Welcome to the Rotary Club of Hudson. I'm Ron Strobel, the Sergeant at Arms. Our invocation this morning is by Catherine Sines.
Thank you, sir. Good morning, Rotarians. This morning, I found an invocation online for New Year's by Vinta Hampton Wright. Please join me. God of all time, help us enter the new year quietly, thoughtful of who we are to ourselves and to others, mindful that our steps make an impact and our words carry power. May we walk gently. May we speak only after we have listened well. Creator of all life, help us enter the new year reverently, aware that you have endowed every creature and plant, every person and habitat with beauty and purpose. May we regard the world with tenderness. May we honor rather than destroy. Lover of all souls, help us enter the new year joyfully, willing to laugh and dance and dream, remembering our many gifts with thanks and looking forward to blessings yet to come. May we welcome your lavish love in this new year. May the grace and peace of God bless us now and in the days ahead. Amen. Thank you.
Thank you, Catherine. And since we're getting to the bottom of the alphabet, it's time for me to lead us in the pledge and the four-way test. Please join me in the pledge. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And the four-way test of the things we think, say, and do. First, is it the truth? Second, is it fair to all concerned? Third, will build goodwill and better friendships. And fourth, will be beneficial to all concerned. Do we have any guests today, Chris? Okay. Our president, Father Joe Boisel.
Morning. Good morning, Rotarians. Happy, first of all, 11th day of Christmas. I'm not sure what we're supposed to get today. I keep wanting the Lords of Leaping, but I can't never remember how many we're supposed to have. 10, maybe. There's the Lords of Leaping out there. Yes, or whatever. It's also the new year. I love the beginning of the new year. For me, it is so cathartic. I cleaned out my closet on Monday. Like took a bunch of clothes to go to charity. I love shoes. I have more shoes than my wife, and she has a lot of shoes. And I got rid of a bunch of shoes, so now I can buy more. All right, so all that stuff. That was all free. It didn't cost you a dime extra, right there. It was all part of the package. Thank you to the volunteers who went yesterday to Hudson High School for was yesterday, wasn't it? The first one. To judge the random acts of kindness. And I saw a few slots available for next week. It is Tuesday, Wednesday, I believe, next week. So if you haven't done that, you're interested in doing it, there's a link from Marilyn's email, and it can take you right there to the sign up genie, monkey, master, whatever the sign up thing is called, and you can get in on that. We are taking up collections for the Boys and Girls Club, and the following items that we're trying to get: paper towels. It says that Bounty brand is preferred. Perhaps Procter & Gamble has something going on in here. Stackable or shelf stable snacks. They're not stackable. They're stable is what they are. Snacks like cereal, crackers, chips, cookies, trail mix, the like. and then double A batteries. So if you would like to bring any of those in, we're collecting through the whole month. Is that right, Terry, on this? Okay. Yes. Get on this, Pat.
Just so everybody's aware that there's a great likelihood that the kids in Akron are going to have a traumatic experience taking place potentially next week with a potential teacher strike in Akron. The Boys and Girls Club and the YMCA are one of the only two agencies in Akron that are going to provide care for kids between 8:30 and 2:30 if there's a strike. So us being able and giving supplies right now to the Boys and Girls Club is of vital importance for them being able to, because a lot of the kids and where they would get breakfast and lunch at school, if there's only going to be one building open per cluster for the kids to go and get their breakfasts and lunches. So this is a timing of us doing this right now for the Boys and Girls Club is of vital importance to what they're trying to do.
It's a real need. Okay, absolutely. Thanks for letting us know about that. Yeah, so as much as we can get in to them, ideally would be would be ideal rather. Board of Directors meets next week. So if you're a member of that Board of Directors, we expect to see you there. If you're not and you're interested in what's going on, come watch me herd cats for an hour and join us in that. There is a gala meeting on the 18th. And so if you are interested in being part of that or already part of that committee, then plan on, is that Marilyn? I assume you're heading this up and they'll be immediately following this meeting. Okay, on the 18th. On the 25th, we're going to have our first beer garden meeting. So a committee who is involved in that beer garden. I'm interested in that. I'm going to be part of that. And I know Patrick is as well. Maybe there are others who are already on board with that. The 25th following this, following the morning meeting. And yes, we'll begin to work on our plans for this coming beer garden. I think it's in August, isn't it, Patrick? Yes. Okay. Any other announcements that you know of that I have not yet mentioned that we need to make known for the good of the order, as we say in my field? No. All right. Well, then with that, I'm going to invite Barbara Marshall to come up to the podium here. We are going, she's been with us for goodness, several weeks now. And so we are fortunate to have her as a transfer member from the Three Rivers, Michigan club. And yeah, we're really lucky to have her. Fortunate to bring her back to the Buckeye State where she belongs. And you know, anybody we can rescue from
Thank you so much.
from Michigan. So share a little bit about yourself.
I am a returning Buckeye. I grew up here in Hudson. I finished a 47-year career in education about 5 years ago now. So a journey that was lovely, fun all the way. I don't do anything that isn't fun. So that really is it in a nutshell.
Okay. And what are your favorite things to do?
Now, well, if we had snow, I'd be snowshoeing or cross-country skiing, but we don't get a whole lot of snow here. But my snowshoes are in the garage, ready to go as soon as we get something for me to work with. Other than that, it's sewing, quilting, and doing some new things that I've never done before. So I'm just reaching out.
What's your favorite type of literature to read?
Non-education. Anything non-education at this point, because for 47 years, that's all I read. So I'm just anything I can get my hands on.
Happy to read a novel now.
Oh, yes, definitely.
Good. Well, welcome. Let's welcome our Okay, now I'm going to invite David Basil, our member, to come, our chair rather of the speaker committee, to come up and introduce our gaggle of speakers. Are we doing? We're going to do separate introductions. There you go. Bring them all in. All right.
Thank you, Father Joe. It's my privilege to stand in for Jim Ahern. It's a little bit warmer where he's at, but I don't think a whole lot. That's pretty unusual for us. And Happy New Year to my fellow Rotarians, guests, and those watching. Today, we kick off the month of January. The theme for this month is health and wellness. And we are privileged today to have three speakers, all of whom are members of our club. Doug McDowell will speak on evolving issues with Medicare health insurance. Phil Tobin will speak about his personal experience with having a heart attack. And Dr. Patricia Goetz will speak about the effects of childhood trauma. And with your indulgence, I will do all of the introductions at once. It'll be a little bit smoother that way. And at the end, we'll have all of the questions for all of the speakers at once. The first speaker today will be Doug McDowell. Doug retired in December of 2013 after 40 years in corporate credit and financial management. In January of 2014 through May of 2014, he worked as a consultant for a private equity group. September of 2017 to December of 2017, he was an enrollment specialist for SumaCare in their health insurance agency. And in May of 2017, obtained a license to sell health insurance in the state of Ohio. Since March of 2018, when he joined IEN Risk Management as a senior insurance product specialist, he has operated out of his home office and has about 100 clients. Deb and I are among those 100. He has assisted clients enrolling in Medicare, review their Medicare options, and select the plan that is best for them. Phil Tobin is one of the pioneers in the development of donor-advised funds, is chairman and president of iGift Fund, the national independent sponsor of donor-advised funds. Phil's work with donor-advised funds began in 1986 as CFO of the Cleveland Foundation, which is America's first community foundation. He left the Cleveland Foundation in 1992 to co-found with son Tom, the American Endowment Foundation, one of the largest charities in the country with over $8 billion in donor-advised funds. In 2017, Phil left American Endowment and founded iGift. He is a graduate of the Wharton School at Penn and is also on the Hudson Community Foundation. Dr. Patricia Goetz is currently in private practice in Hudson, where she has lived for 18 years. Early in her career, she was involved in the treatment of child abuse at Children's Hospital of Pittsburgh, where she obtained her medical degree. From 1999 to 2008, Dr. Goetz was the chief clinical officer, of the Stark County Mental Health Board, working to promote the system of care for children and families. She was also the assistant medical director in the Office of Children's Services and Prevention for the Ohio Department of Mental Health. She received, as I said, her medical degree from the University of Pittsburgh and is on the faculty at Case Western Reserve University since 1992, where she is an assistant professor of child and adolescent psychiatry. Please join me in welcoming our first speaker today, Doug McDowell.
Another hand. First of all, I need to speak into the. I want to apologize ahead of time. I'm overcoming a head cold, which you can probably hear. And I just brought the coffee up to give me a little sip every once in a while. When I'm hoping that my handout's going to show up. When Jim called me about 2 weeks ago and said, can you speak about 10 minutes about Medicare? I said, 10 minutes about Medicare. I haven't had that yet.
I got into this. I just want to say, first of all, this is an incredibly regulated industry to protect a very, very vulnerable population. And as part of that, as a licensed agent, I must say that my presentation is an educational presentation, which means in no way can I address any providers, any kind of detail that might have to do with emphasizing one plan over another. I'm speaking just about generic concept in Medicare without anything specific. That being said, when Jim said, spend 10 minutes talking about Medicare, the only thing the thing I could narrow it down to was some kind of my insight and explanation of all the noise you hear going on because the fact that AEP, just annual enrollment period, just ended in December. And Phil asked me at coffee this morning, when are these TV ads going to stop? They're not. I'll explain why soon. One of the overriding issues in the industry is Medicare insurance is one of the few growing areas in the insurance industry. The number of people turning 65 every year, the number is just phenomenal for the foreseeable future. Okay, so the basic question is, what is Medicare? You've got original Medicare, which is parts A, hospitalization, part B, medical. Then below that is secondary insurance, which is Medigap or Medicare supplement. And then on top of that is prescription drug plans. That's option number one on the delivery system of how we and you get Medicare. The other option is option number two, where a private insurance company sits down across the table from a major provider or a minor provider and works out a contract for a one-year period where the insurance provider puts together a plan that they'll manage an individual's Medicare delivery system on behalf of the government, Medicare, on behalf of CMS, which is the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services, for a monthly fixed price. Okay. And my editorial comment here is, you're seeing the more and more ads you're seeing every year and every month are from the option number two, which is also called Part C. Secondary insurance, which is Medicare supplement, is written by an independent insurance provider licensed in the state of Ohio that stands second to Medicare. So what happens when you go into your provider, get a service, they will electronically enter that service into Medicare. Medicare processes it, goes forward, and then they know who your secondary is. The secondary gets notified electronically. They will pay the part not covered by Medicare. The difference between part option one and option two is, this is straight from CMS. Option number one, you pay a monthly premium, and depending on the plan you buy, you'll pay little or next to nothing for the rest of the year. You can go to anybody in the United States that accepts Medicare, which is hard to believe there's a provider that doesn't provide Medicare, doesn't accept Medicare in today's world. Anybody in the United States. Overall, typically, except within these, to a small extent, it only covers coverage in the United States, within the domestic United States. Part C, you might pay little or no monthly premium. They have networks. You pay co-pays, co-insurance, and deductibles with an annual, what we call MOOP, maximum out-of-pocket payment for the year. Next, please. So this is what you're insuring yourself. Medicare was always designed, and that I don't know if you've heard the rough 80-20 rule, that Medicare will pay 80% and you're going to be responsible for 20%, which isn't which is close enough. But these are the kind of payments we would be responsible for without some kind of a backup plan. The real thing is, the real key here is there would be no out-of-pocket maximum for the year. So if you went into the hospital for 3 different events during a year's time, these deductibles and co-payments start again. Bear with me, please. What I've seen happen in my 6 years in the business is, next, please. And this is go ahead, go up, keep going. Next, the one that says Medicare supplement at the top. Here's what I've basically told you up till now. In the last 6 years, there's one major event that's happened in the supplement industry. I don't exactly remember the name of the regulation or whatever, but there's a general concept in the insurance industry that you should pay you should have some skin in the game. By that, I point out your homeowner's insurance, your driver, your car insurance, auto insurance. You have a $500 or a $1,000 deductible. So they came up with a law that if you turn 65 or you go on Medicare after January 1st, 2020, you can no longer buy a plan that pays the Part B deductible, which right now is running $233 a year. So you have to have some skin in the game. And Medicare supplement plans always start with a letter. Before January 1st, 2020, the go-to plan for the typical person was Plan F, which paid from $1 of those additional charges not covered by Medicare. And everybody say, well, they pay for everything. Well, they ought to, you're paying for it. So they came out with this new, and the other thing I've learned in my time in this business, many people don't like to change. Okay, 2 minutes? I'm sorry. Okay, here's the message. The government wants you to be on a Medicare Advantage plan. Why is that? Because what they want to do is I explained to you the system, they've got this big infrastructure to support all those payments. They want to basically sit down, write check, negotiate with the providers, and not have to deal with the clients. They don't want to have huge banks of customer service reps. Most states have already transitioned Medicaid over to Medicare Advantage plans, because now the state of Ohio doesn't need a whole bunch of customer service reps in Columbus talking to people in Medicaid. Plus, I think, this is an editorial comment on, and that's why Medicare Advantage has gone from 70%, Medicare Advantage has gone from 30% of the market when I started 6 years ago January to this year, it's going to be about 50-50. And they've done that through the TV ads that you've seen. Zero premiums, all the bells and whistles, okay? And I see that trend continuing. 10 minutes is not enough to cover but that's why you're going to see, and I'll refute. I believe somewhere down the road, if you want to have a model for national health insurance, look at the Medicare Advantage model. Combination of private and public, administered by private insurance companies, the government not involved in processing claims. Okay, and that's why I can't, there's many leading insurance companies have had record years. Stocks way up. And why is that? Because of Medicare Advantage. Okay. Phil, I'm sorry.
Like a balance.
Well, here, why don't you go over? Are you going to sit or are you going to stand?
I'm going to stand behind the chair if I can, but I'm going to move it over. Can you move the chair over to make it- Please. Okay,
You
good,
go
good,
ahead.
good. You know, for those of you in the room that are old enough to remember a show on television called Dragnet, I don't know exact words, but it started with something like this. There are 13 million people that live in Los Angeles. This is a story of one of them. There are 6 million people each year that go to the emergency room with the symptoms of a heart attack. This is the story of one of them, my story. Next, please. It's not the right slide, but we'll go with it anyway. Let me give you a little bit of background on what happened. This was in October 23rd. It was a Sunday. It was a clear day, but very, very cold. My wife was at a meeting up in town. I decided to do some leaf blowing. Now, leaf blowing is not very complicated, not very stressing. But as I was doing it, I had these unusual feelings, these feelings of pressure on my chest. I didn't know what it was. I kept doing it for a couple hours. I also noticed that I was really breaking out in a sweat on a cold day, which was really sort of surprising. So I went in and rested up a little bit. And that afternoon, Joan and I were going to an event up in Cleveland. We were driving down Aurora Street from my house to the Christ Church Episcopal. And I turned left on Oviatt Street. She said, "What's going on?" I said, "I think I'm going to go over and have a little check at the EMS before we go in." She said, "Are you okay?" And I said, "No, I just feel this pressure on my chest." EMS said my blood pressure was 210 over 185. She said, "You're not going home. You're going to the hospital right now." Now, what are the symptoms that I felt? Uncomfortable pressure on the chest. I did have shortness of breath, and I broke out in a sweat. Now, there are other symptoms that I did not have. Pain and discomfort in the chest, arms, back, neck, jaw, stomach. These are common, and very often they're more common with women than men. And sometimes they don't show up at all. Nausea, lightheadedness. I didn't have any of that kind of stuff. Go on to the next one, if you would, please. Also, I experienced something weird. There was this funny feeling that came across me of impending doom. That's the only way I could describe it. I'd never had that experience before in my life. The anxiety just went up to the point where it was almost extreme. I just couldn't even possibly stay within my skin. I was unable to settle down. I had a premonition, a feeling that something bad was going to happen, but I didn't know what it was. And I had this real urge to seek medical care. So the experience in the hospital was one of about 18 hours. And I'll mention just one thing. As I went to the emergency room, it was very busy. And if you want to have an interesting thing, go to an emergency room of inner city hospital on a weekend. Now, I was the last person to get in the room because it was really crowded. So they left me in a bed wired up with all kinds of stuff right at the entrance to it. And since I was wired up, they didn't move me for the next 11 hours. And so I sat there and I watched everything come into that hospital, and you just can't imagine gunshot wounds and all kinds of things that would go on. It's really a worthwhile experience to go through it. After 11 hours, they decided to put me into a little cubicle rather than leaving me out in the hallway. As soon as they got in the cubicle, I asked them, am I going to have a heart attack? And they said, you are having a heart attack right now. Now that's an important thing. I was in the hospital when I had it. And that's part of my story. So this goes on to the next one, if I would, please. Procedure in the lab, or in the cath lab. Cath lab is an operating room, but it's set up really for catheterization. So they put a small incision in your arm, and they put a guide wire in there. They also insert some dye into your blood to see what's going on with your heart. At that particular point, the heart was blocked at 90% in one point, 30% in another point, and 60% in another point. And so I really was struggling with it at that point. They put it with x-rays, they put this catheter in there, and then they inject the dye. Next one, please. In the cath lab procedure, the stent or balloon was put into the catheter, and with it, there is a metal device called a stent, and they put it into the farthest one, and then they expand the balloon. So it's basically like getting a tire fixed with a flat tire from the inside. And then they deflate the balloon, the stent stays there. You went on to the next one, did the same thing. This procedure lasted about an hour. I was awake all the time, so it's fascinating to experience what was going on at that period of time. And then I'd like to show you what exactly happened at that point. More x-rays are taken just to say, go on to the next slide, if you would, please, Don. This is what it was like before the stent. I look up at this is a upper right-hand corner, upper center. That's your blood vessel coming into your heart, your main artery coming into your heart. And you'll see an arrow there where there's a blockage. That was about 90%. There's another one halfway down that was about 60%. And then there was another one at the end over there, about 30%. Next, please, Tom. This is what it was like before and after. One on the left, what you just saw. Now look at this one on the right. It's like the Mississippi River. It just flowed within that period of time. It's like you're just sitting there watching something happening to you that you just can't imagine. They fixed it. You know, I don't really look upon it as being a medical procedure like an operation. It's more like a mechanical fix. And not everybody's going to have the same situation that I had, but this is a wonderful experience to go through, at least to watch it happen. Incidentally, the doctor was teaching a young doctor at the same time. So there was a constant dialogue going back. This is what we're going to do. Now watch this. He was instructing somebody, but he was also telling me because I was wide awake all during that period of time. Next slide, please, Tom. Lessons to learn. Now this is the one I want to leave you with. This is the message. And this message, if you follow this thing, you may survive. If you don't follow this thing, you may not survive. I survived. Don't wait. If you have the symptoms of a heart attack, do not wait. Next one is, don't go to the hospital yourself. Don't drive to the hospital. Don't have somebody else drive you to the hospital. I don't know whether there's one of my good friends is had a heart attack. His wife drove him to the hospital. He died in a car going down. And I don't think she could ever forgive herself for that. Call 911 right away. So the idea is don't delay. If you have any of these symptoms, call 911 because 911 is equipped to really handle what you're going through, no matter what it is. They can do all kinds of things on the way down into the hospital. But it's a wonderful experience to go through. And I just thought I'd pass that word on to you. Thank you so much. I appreciate it doing it. Thank you, Doctor.
I've been a child psychiatrist for over 40 years. And even when I first trained back in the 70s, we really struggled with getting people to realize that child abuse and neglect is an epidemic. So I'm going to show you the first video. And this is about, how much trauma is out there. So it is really common. And the problem is much of it is secret and we don't know about it. This is not a problem of just the poor. It occurs in all socioeconomic backgrounds. Well, how is this affecting us now as adults? Back in the early 2000s, a doctor with Kaiser Permanente worked in an obesity clinic, and he couldn't understand why his patients, 55% of them, would leave after they were losing weight, and they could have continued to lose weight. And finally, he started to ask them, some of them, well, why did you leave? And he found out that actually a lot of these people found that being obese was not the problem. It was the solution to their issues, and that they found it as something that was protective. So he underwent a big study. It's called the ACEs study, and looked at the effects of childhood trauma on adult health. And so I gave you all a little thing that you can read that has all the ACEs there. And what it is it looks at things like, have you been humiliated, psychological abuse, physical abuse, sexual abuse? It also looks at parents separated or divorced, were your parents high or drunk, looking at being exposed to domestic violence, anybody in the family having a substance abuse problem, a mental health issues, or has anybody gone to prison? So these 10 ACEs is what they looked at, and depending on the score you got, would increase your risk of healthcare problems as an adult. Could I have the next video? So this is pretty costly economically, as you can see.
And the final analysis here are a major or deep factor underlying Kendall's comment. The ACE study grew out of innumerable counterintuitive observations that we made in the course of operating a major obesity program. And being forced by patients, first to recognize the frequency of childhood sexual abuse, then of major household dysfunction during developmental years, the ACE study represented our desire to determine in a general population the prevalence and long-term significance of these problems that we really had not thought about before in adult medicine. This is the sister of our original patient. Listen to what she says.
It's hard being left with it, that was here on the line. You know, I'm still in that one. I get into therapy. I think yeah, most
Which has the most to do with your putting on so much weight?
That's a hard question. I think I started getting heavier and heavier after my father and mother divorced. But then I started really getting heavy after molestation. And I would try to take it off, and then I would just keep it all back and then some.
I'll tell you briefly our general design is to provide you some skeletal outline. And it's factual that we found, as you all know, that adverse childhood experiences are very. They are cognitive predictors of later social functional well-being, health risks, disease, and medical costs and death. And they are thus the basis for much of what we do in adult medicine and of many major public health and social problems. They're complexly interrelated, not solitary. And that combination of high prevalence and great penetrance makes adverse childhood experiences the leading determinant of the health, social, and economic well-being of the nation.
Change the landscape because of pervasiveness. Huge number of public health problems, cancer problems, depression, substance abuse, sexually transmitted disease, cancer, heart disease, chronic lung disease. We decided that we would study 10 categories of adverse childhood experience. These are all things where there's already great system involvement. And that were potentially modified. We picked 3 categories of abuse. Major physical abuse, and certainly no problem with spanking, problem with serious beating. Major emotional abuse, recurrent humiliation. You are the stupidest kid I've ever seen. You know, your father and I really didn't want a child. Or as a patient said to me fairly recently, his father used to often say, you kids are all be taken out and shot. So the three categories, well, the third category was sexual abuse, contact with sexual abuse, not someone flashing a kid. Two categories of neglect, emotional neglect, physical neglect, and five categories of major household dysfunction. Growing up in a home where a mother was treated violently, growing up in a home where one of the members of the household was imprisoned during childhood or adolescence, growing up in a home where one of the members was a drug user or an alcoholic, growing up in a home where one of the members of the household was chronically depressed, suicidal, or mentally ill or in a state hospital, and growing up in a home without both biological parents. We saw that if any category was present, there's an 87% chance that at least one other category would be present, the 50% chance of three or more categories. And we saw that women are 50% more likely than men to have an ACE score of 5 or more.
I think the most important thing that could give us to the information out of the case study is simply the powerful nature. When people tell me the truth about the law and I listen, you understand their life.
It's made me realize how much of what we see in adult medicine is the result of what was present but not seen in pediatrics.
And it's just not a social worker's problem. It's just not a psychologist's problem. It's not a pediatrician's problem. It's not a juvenile court judge's problem. It's everybody's.
I believe that this is the most important thing.
Could I have the PowerPoint? So as we're getting that up, I want to tell you about a woman that I treated for 20 years or so. She was abused by her uncle. She was horribly sexually abused. He would burn her. He murdered her dog in front of her, beat her. And of course, she was terrified of him for years because he was in the family and she had to see him. When she was a teen, she became severely obese and for a period of time struggled with drug and alcohol use. And 80% of the women who have drug and alcohol problems have a history of some kind of abuse. And it is to get rid of those feelings. She developed type 2 diabetes, high blood pressure. Her ACE score was a 6, and they have done some studies showing that if you have 6 or more ACEs, you will die 20 years earlier than the general population. Have any of you ever had a physician give you one of these? I have not. And I know some of the, like Kaiser Permanente out in California, they make it a regular part of their healthcare. So the higher the score you have, the more problems. And like he said, over 50% have at least one ACE. One thing that he was not accurate about, there's a recent study by Dr. David Finkelhor out of New Hampshire, where at least 25 to 30% of women experience sexual abuse. And in boys, it's probably, well, we know 1 in 6, but boys generally don't share their experiences of abuse. Could I have the next slide? 16% of adults have experienced 4 or more ACEs. And what's really sad is Ohio is among the highest of the risk states, along with Alabama and Mississippi. So we're not doing very good in this state in terms of our healthcare. Next slide, please. If you have an ACE score of 1, you have a 3-fold increase in depression. If we would do more prevention of this way, we could decrease depression by 21 million cases. If you have 8 ACEs, the risk of attempting suicide increases by 5-fold. 2/3 of suicide attempts can be attributed to abusive or traumatic experiences. And 1 or more ACEs, you have 2 times likelihood of substance abuse. And if you have an ACE score of 4, you have a 70% or 700% chance of being an alcoholic as an adult. Next slide, please. People who have reported physical abuse or sexual abuse or domestic violence have 20% risk of type 2 diabetes. If you have experienced physical abuse, parental divorce, or parental loss, or live with somebody who has a substance abuse problem, you have a 20% greater chance of a heart attack. And if you have just 1 ACE greater than 2, you can have an increase of those illnesses. Next slide. As he talked about, he learned about this in his obesity clinic, and there are 78 million obese persons in the United States, and 6 million of them have experienced physical, verbal, or sexual abuse. If you have 4 or more ACEs, you have 2 times the amount of risk of becoming severely obese. So, we've developed a lot of early interventions. Sometimes they're not available to a lot of people. With children, we have something called trauma-focused CBT. With adults, we also have prolonged exposure therapy. With both children and adults, we have something called EMDR, rapid eye movement therapy. But the real problem is coming up with the identification. And it's really important that then the child needs to feel safe. And we need to do a lot of education of our parents. I've worked with a lot of parents and they want to do well for their children, but they don't know how because they weren't parented very well. But it's very hard to get, insurance doesn't pay for prevention work. That, as anybody who has hypertension knows, there's a lot of things that they could do prevention for that, and we don't do it. We've become a system that just works on the end problem instead of the root cause. So anyway, this is a major problem. Not everybody who experiences these ACEs has the health care, that there are things that you can do to protect. One is being more resilient. And by being resilient, you have mentors, you have family, friends that serve as important relationships to you. Many times teachers can be an important mentor to kids. So that there are things that we can do now. And all of you, I know, do a lot with children with our Rotary here, but it's really important that we serve as mentors, even, just to a neighbor kid. You never know what's going on, but to be supportive and to spend time with them. Thank you.
Thank you, Doug, Phil, and Patricia. We'll open it up for questions. If anyone has questions for any of the 3 speakers, please just come down to the microphone. Phil. Yep.
Hey, Doug, just the rest of you here. It's interesting, the cost of what I went through. I just got a bill the other day for the medical services and performing what they did for me over a period of about 17 hours. The bill was $250,000. My portion of the bill, after all the deductions and everything else, was $500. $250,000. Thanks for your insurance.
Well, of course, as most of you know, and Marilyn knows it very well, in the healthcare industry, there's what I call the retail price.
Yeah.
And the retail price is that 250,000, but that's never the real price. There's a negotiated price. And that's what everybody sits down and irons out. And there's some magical system that comes out. Marilyn,
As a representative of the provider side, I have horror stories related to insurance companies' exclusions of particular groups for nefarious reasons. I mean, it just really made no sense at all, some of the things that they were doing. One of the reasons that the managed care companies are profitable is because they don't pay the Medicare rate to the providers. they're actually negotiating discounts off of the Medicare rates, and many people are not aware of that. As we look at a patient presenting, if they have traditional Medicare, we are happier about that. And also because it meant that the patient had more freedom. There was a period of time where a local company in Canton, Ohio was selling a senior product for Medicare, but not informing the patients that if they went to Florida, they had no coverage. They just really had nothing. All that they were going to do was try to get them back to Canton as quickly as possible. So this has been a real evolution of the introduction of the managed care companies. Originally, they were designed to have a profit built in of approximately 9 to 10%. And what they discovered was that it was a very poorly designed product, and many of the insurance companies were making significantly more of that. Humana in particular built a very strong business model based on Medicare Advantage plans. In particular, be very, very cautious of an HMO that ties you very tightly to a particular hospital system. It's difficult to get away from those if you experience any problems. And so just a slight word of caution.
Physicians in the state of Florida are starting to not accept Medicare because they don't make enough money. I just worked with people that moved back from Florida that have ongoing cancer issues because of the lack of providers and in Florida, the access to large numbers of providers of top quality in Northeast Ohio, they've actually in their 80s moved back to Northeast Ohio.
So first of all, thank you to all three of you. It was really fascinating, especially Phil, seeing sort of the firsthand experience of going through the heart attack. So I just turned 65 this year. We have the alphabet soup of Medicare, and my procedure on my knee, I think the besides that 200 something deductible, I think the only thing we paid for was the cane. So, but I will say this, we had an advisor that was recommended by a friend obviously Doug is excellent. So I would say get an advisor because that's really the key. I did have one question for Dr. Goetz, and I know we're short on time, but for the school system, it's sort of a conundrum. We're trying to identify kids at risk through various ways of doing that. We have surveys and observational and so forth. But we do get that pushback from certain parents that we don't want to invade people's privacy. We don't want to somehow do something that counteracts the parents' responsibilities. But on the other hand, some of the situations you described, if the parents are the actual cause of the problem, then and I don't know if you have an answer to this, but how do we try and identify kids at risk, but not sort of counteract the parents' first responsibilities?
Yeah, years ago, and it's still out there, Columbia had a computer program. It was focused on adolescent suicide called Teen Screen, but it had all of the major problems in it. And they really found that kids were much more honest when they can just sit there and click on a computer, and they would then find out which kids were at risk and then could have a individual interview with them and to find more. There was a lot of pushback about that, again, saying it was violating rights or whatever, but it's still out there and available. The other thing is there is a nice paper and pencil for trauma. It's called the UCLA Trauma Index. It's not very long, and it asks you things like, have you ever been in a tornado? Have you ever been in a car accident? All those kinds of things can be traumatic. And then it asks about physical abuse, sexual abuse. Have you seen anybody shot? Things like that. And then it goes through and asks you the kind of symptoms you might have. Do you have nightmares? Do you try to stay away from the place where maybe you saw your friend shot? All those kinds of things. And you can determine how much PTSD symptoms are there. But again, any of that you would have to have, parental consent to do. But there are tools out there that can be used.
Yes, thank you all. What fantastic. Let's give a round of applause. I want to tell you, one of the things that crept in my mind as I was listening to the presentations was how wonderfully fortunate we are to live in the 21st century. If you had lived before 1875 in the Western world, the average person made less than $1 a day, abject poverty by United Nations standards. I mean, we would all be just incredibly poor with zero social safety nets. Families were often very abusive. And so Phil, laying there watching them perform a procedure on his heart 100 years ago, you know, no, you wouldn't. Yeah. You'd have rode your horse down the road and, and fallen off. Yes. Well, yeah. So that's my thinking is how fortunate we are to be alive. I hope you have that same, I'm going to draw because I have no skin in this game and I'm a priest. I don't cheat people. All right. So here you go. Much. 681-130. 681-130. Payout $12 today. Get up here, Jay. Jackpot $296. All right. We see it's in there. Well, trust me, it's in there. You didn't see it? Oh, alas, not the black one. No, I do not. You go. All right. Well, have a great day. Make a difference in somebody's life. Be great. Hey, and a quick shout out to Thomas, who did a fantastic job today running 3 different presentations and different videos. A big round of applause for Thomas back there.